Welcome to my channel on the best of fantasy. Today I am discussing Blood Rites, Book 6 of the Dresden Files by Jim Butcher. Since it is Book 6 of a series, I figure probably anyone who'll be watching this video has probably read the Dresden Files, and so I'm just going to go ahead and talk spoilers in this video. So this is my warning, spoilers for Book 6, Blood Rites, and anything previous to it. I have not read beyond this, so no spoilers, please, in the comments for anything beyond Book 6. Now, I came into this one having heard from Dresden Files fans that it would be likely that I would not enjoy Blood Rites as much as some of the previous entries. And so I did come into it with fairly low expectations. And I was pleasantly surprised. Maybe that's a good thing to come into a book with low expectations sometimes. There were the things that had bothered me a bit in the previous installments, the presence of the male gaze, but it really was no worse in spite of the adult film setting. It really was actually no worse than in earlier books. And also there was the whole white court thing with the as I think of them in my head, the sex vampires. And there's, it's just a lot of this is part of the male gaze thing. It's part of Harry and his awkwardness, his loneliness, his trauma. I've come to realize that it's all rolled up into this first-person narration, which is a very honest look into an individual's soul. In this case, a person who's still figuring himself out, somebody who's had a lot of trauma. So there's, in this sense, Harry is an open book. All of his thoughts are just out there on the page for us. His flaws, in fact, he's probably even harder on himself than the people who are near him. So I do appreciate that, and I don't feel that Blood Rites was any worse than any of the previous books. In fact, there are a lot of great things to say. Some things that I really enjoyed about Blood Rites, some developments that have me even more invested in the series, and I find myself, every time I read a Dresden Files book, more and more in Harry's corner, more and more rooting for Harry and hoping the best for him. So one of the things I really appreciated was the what Jim Butcher did with Thomas, the vampire from the White Court. And interestingly, I just, as an aside, when it comes to the various vampire courts in Dresden Files, I think everyone recognizes that vampires are an embodiment of the human fascination with two things, which are common enough in literature. One would be death, so mortality, and the other fascination wrapped up in vampires is sex. So death and sex. I mean, yeah, there's no revelation there. And it's interesting what Jim Butcher has done with these three vampire courts. You have the White Court, where he has taken the sex association and dialed it up. And then you have the Black Court, which is where he pretty much lands the death association, that they are very corpse-like and really they're entirely, he's taken the death part of it and shifted it entirely onto the Black Court, whereas the Red Court is both. I think the Red Court are in some ways more traditional vampires, I suppose, in combining those two elements at least. So anyway, back to Thomas. I thought it was really cool that we found out that Thomas is actually Harry's half-brother by the same mother. That was an interesting touch. I did not see that coming. It does explain a few things. I have to think that Jim Butcher probably thought that through ahead of time at some point. He realized, and held that really nicely. I really had not even begun to think about Thomas in those terms. I like that we've gotten some added dimensions to Thomas as a character. I really had previously dismissed him as a very superficial character, just a playboy, White Court vampire, that sort of thing. But now I think of him as a much more complex character with some actual conflict built into him. Yay, good job, Jim Butcher, giving this character internal conflict, because he is of the White Court, but he's also he has his human side, and he has in the past reached out, tried to help Harry, and now we kind of know why. And I think that's really cool that you have these two conflicting sides of Thomas, and it makes him a more interesting character, definitely. So I like that added dimension, the fact that he is Harry's half-brother. It gives him some depth. We've got some history to Thomas now that I appreciate. It also adds to Harry, because the revelation that Harry has family, that he has family that is alive, is very important. The impact that it has on Harry, his realization that I have a brother, changes him. And it increases my sympathy for him as a character, someone going through life without a family. It just kind of highlights that. And the fact that Harry is contrasted with Murphy, his friend, who has a big family, we find out in here. So that's another character I found that I liked the added dimensions in Blood Rites. I really love the relationship between Harry and Murphy. And the fact is they are friends, and that is the foundation of their relationship. But they also have a professional relationship, and there seems to be some sparks there, a little bit of romance potentially. I'll be interested to see where Jim Butcher takes that. I really don't know. I wouldn't be surprised to see Harry and Murphy having a bit more going on attraction-wise, but I also wouldn't be surprised if that doesn't happen, considering the basis of their relationship really is friendship and a growing respect. But I loved the added Murphy dimensions. We get more depth and history to her. We find out more about her family and who she is as a person, how her professional life has affected her personal life, and her determination, her sheer determination as a woman in a male-dominated sphere, who is constantly made to prove herself and feels the pressure of doing that. And I loved what Jim Butcher did with Murphy. I see her as an increasingly complex character among the characters in Dresden Files, not counting Harry, who's obviously very complex. I think that Murphy is probably the most well-developed of all the other characters that I've met so far in the series. And I really enjoy the interactions between Murphy and Harry and how they always have each other's back. So I enjoyed that dimension a lot. We also get more about, Harry's mother in here. And I thought that was interesting. The backstory we get, we learn more about Harry's mother and her relationship with Lord Wraith and all of that. And of course, her attempt to break with the past and lead a clean life, which explains Harry's existence and Harry's mother's relationship with Harry's father. So we get to learn where Harry's heart comes from his father. But of course, his magical prowess is from his mother. So really, I think we're getting a more and more complete view of Harry in these little bits that are given to us in each book. And I really like that. I like how Jim Butcher is feeding us little bits of Harry's past as he's discovering them. Something he didn't know about. A lot of this came from Ebenezer in this book, whom we find out was a kind of a wizard assassin. So, wow. And that complicates things for Harry too, because his view of Ebenezer and of the world and what he thought he knew suddenly isn't quite valid anymore. And that's a sad moment, really, with Ebenezer, when Harry realizes that his mentor, this person he looked up to, he would defend against anyone, is an assassin. And in a way, kind of used Harry and kept secrets from Harry. So that was a little bit of a sad moment in here. I hope to see more. Obviously, I believe there will be more interactions between Harry and Ebenezer, so I'll be curious to see where that goes. But yeah, a lot of this, of course, keep in mind, all this is coming from Harry's perspective. That is part of the genius of the series, is the first-person narration and the fact that we learn things as Harry learns them. So his view of Murphy, a lot of that, the potential spark there is coming from Harry's. We don't know what Murphy's thinking about all that, right? So it is very much his perspective that we're getting. And it is a flawed perspective in many ways, including when he thinks about himself, what he thinks of himself. So we get more and more, and it's great. It's really a wonderful character study, I would say. And a couple other wonderful little side characters in here. One is the introduction of Mouse. I loved it. And Mouse the puppy. I expect Mouse to do some growing based on the little hint at the end where Thomas seemed to understand more than Harry, because Thomas got the big doggy puppy dog food. So we're assuming that Harry's like, why'd you buy the big dog, puppy food? So I think Harry's in for a bit of a surprise in terms of how much room he's going to have in his little basement apartment there. But Mouse, I really look forward to seeing more from Mouse. I love his scrappiness and the fact that he's just fearless. Fearless little fellow. And Mr., I haven't talked a lot about Mr. in my previous Dresden Files videos, but I think we should appreciate Mr. as well. He has the new kid on the block, Mouse, but what about Mr.? He's been, steady. We've always had Mr., and he's always served Harry well, including when Bob the Skull needs to do a little adventuring in order to get some information. Poor old Mr. ends up being the vehicle, if you will. So lots of action in this one, lots to love. I mean, the Butcher does a great job with keeping the pace really fast with the action. It's great in here. The opener is fantastic. I mean, how can you beat these mutant monkey demon things that are flinging poo at Harry, flaming poo at Harry? I mean, that's just crazy. I love the openers. Every opener in Dresden Files seems to have this crazy, wacky, chaotic opening, which just pulls you right in, and really Butcher doesn't let go in the course of the story. These read really fast, and I don't know if that will continue to be the case as the books get more and more epic, but so far every single one has been a very quick read for me. And the plot is the usual Dresden Files plot. You have these three disparate elements, these three threads that become more and more intertwined as the story progresses, with Harry sort of juggling all three and trying to figure out, and then suddenly realize how they're related to each other. So in this case, you have the Black Court stuff going on, and you have the intrigue going on around the film production, and then you have the White Court stuff going on, and all this stuff gets intermingled as the plot progresses. In the midst of these three-part plots, though, there are all these hints of bigger stuff looming. And that's also the case in Blood Rites. There are some bigger things looming that I'm expecting to see more and more of as the series progresses. So hints of some really to do with Harry's past, to do with the Never Never, and other things. So I am genuinely intrigued to see where the series goes next. I'm very excited for Book 7, which I hear is a fan favorite. A lot of people seem to love Book 7 from the feedback that I've heard. So I'm very excited to read that. Maybe Book 7 is the moment where I really get the Dresden File bug and have to keep reading these books in quick succession. We'll see. But I am very much looking forward to continuing in the series. That's it from me for now. Until next time.